Welcome to Deep Thought. Many people think their perception is universal. And this is a sad thing. And, like I always say on here, I've had to go through it too. Not in recent years because I learned the lesson, but it's a reality out here. Many people really can't see beyond their noses. And they think whatever their perception is of the world, they're right and the rest of the world is wrong. Indeed, when people have a certain perception of things, they will tend to locate people who have the same perception. Those are people they click with. Those are people they get along with. And many people stay stuck in that perception, even if the perception isn't helping them, even if they're not going anywhere. Because understand, the way we see the world, the way we perceive the world is very powerful. It gives us an idea of what we can do, where we can go and everything. You know, we could perceive it the same way maybe a lizard perceives it, right? And that perception right there is like whatever your immediate environment is. Like you got people in some places and they've never traveled outside of it. And even when they'll see like different realities outside of it, like a reality show or TV shows, oh, it's just make believe. They're faking. They can't get an idea that, things could be different, especially if they're in a dysfunctional neighborhood, because everything is based on that. They can't really leave it easily. Even if they go on vacation or try to, they still might not see everything going on. That's why it's important for young people to travel, to see something different, just so their same perception isn't stuck. And, that's one way. Then another way is sometimes their perception, they do find the people their perception clicks with, but then their perception doesn't go outside of that group. And that's a very key thing, because when you find people who co-sign whatever your perception is, yeah, it feels good and stuff, but then it becomes a case of not I'm right and you're wrong. It'd be like we're right and you're wrong. Indeed, that's why you have a lot of conflict in this society. Be it gender, be it racial, philosophical, there's a whole bunch of stuff. I'm right, you're wrong, because this is your perception. And it's really limiting. Now, if you can be lucky and whatever your perception is puts you in a position to make lots of money, oh, you're very lucky, really. You are extremely lucky. Usually people who have that are people who are born into wealth. And all they've been shown is one thing, right? All they've been shown is one idea, one set of beliefs. And depending on if you can get a group of people of similar perception together, they can actually put together like maybe a subculture or community or whatever, a group where someone can grow up with that mindset. Now, I'm going to be real. That can be good, but they can also be bad. And it's rare that it's actually good all the time or most of the time or for most groups. It's rare. It happens. I got to give it to it. It happens. But that group would have to be in a position of power. They would have to have wealth, influence. And that's usually maybe, you're talking maybe the 1%. Like I've heard stories about like very rich people, they didn't have any idea about what went on in a grocery store, like a record, because they ain't never have to shop. And that's how deep it is, right? But that's actually one of the better things. A lot of times people have a negative perception. They have a negative perception of a group of people, have a negative perception of another spiritual system. Hence, we have the conflicts now. Or they have a negative perception of anything outside of their little area which they live. Like you have significant parts of the country who they only perceive what's in that immediate area. They're not cosmopolitan like cities. Cities, you can't help but run into people with different perceptions and see different things. But if you're in a small town or sometimes even in cities, depending on where it is, people can be very insulated. And other than entertainment, a lot of people don't watch the news or see what's going on. Even though you got the information out there that there's something different. It's one thing to see it on some type of device, but then it's another thing to actually experience it, you know? And it's a real issue. And there's so many little ways, you know, they'll feel like you got, and I've talked about this on my men's channel, you have men who feel like all women behave a certain way. That's their perception. Now, it might be legitimate, that's how they behave towards him in particular, but every man doesn't share that. Same thing with women. You have a lot of women who might feel like, well, all men are dogs and all of that. And, of course, they'll be around other women who think the same thing. But then some other women be like, oh, no, they're very nice. They're very kind. They simply have a different perception. But then all of these things become a problem when people think it's universal, because that means they're not open to expanding their perception. They're stuck in that perception. And really, that perception, especially if it's negative, can be a prison. Actually, anytime, even if somebody their perception is that of a wealthy person, wealthy, influential person, they can be stuck too. That can be a prison. Because what happens when a situation doesn't register, you know? Because I've seen that. And one thing, and I've actually said too, I said, a way to really hurt some person is to show them the reality. Because what happens when we have these perceptions, what they become, beliefs. And I've talked multiple times about false beliefs. And, you know, the false belief, it can help in some ways, but it blinds us to what we can really do, because we got to see the whole picture in order to know what we can truly do, you know? And it's something that people got to work on, because it's not a good thing. I mean, your perception is okay, but you got to realize there's other ways of thinking out there. And it doesn't mean you have to adopt those other ways of thinking, but you got to just know they're there. Everybody doesn't share your thing, because what I say again about the conflicts, a lot of it is just because people have a different view of something. And then if you were to outside and see it, you'd be like, what's different about what y'all saying? You know? Like, I give an example. I never forget, there was a couple books out years ago. One was called You Know You're a Redneck If, and another one was You Know You're Ghetto If, right? Both comedy books, right? And they were on, I think it was the Chris Spencer show back in the day. Chris Spencer, black comedian talk show. He was on there with Jeff Foxworthy. You know, he had those famous routine, You Know You're a Redneck If. And they were both reading their respective books. Chris Spencer was reading You Know Your Ghetto If, and Jeff Foxworthy was reading You Know Your Redneck If. And then something funny, and they were reading the stuff, and they said, you know what? We're talking about the same things. They actually switched books and started reading from it. I was like, they realized. Now somebody might say, well, don't they make it universal? No, that means there's other ways of thinking about it, right? You know, other people might see something, and I mean, it wasn't like totally alike, but, you know, just let you know there's more out there. So, anyway, that's the key. So, anyway, I want y'all to think on that. No matter who we are, no matter what we see, there's more out there. So anyway, I'll talk to y'all. Think on this. Peace.